This is our kind of preliminary event for our CARST 2020 conference online. Next week we've got a full lineup of events and then a couple too that are coming just after that. So we do have our annual general meeting coming up on Monday. You might want to check the time because we announced that when we were first intentionally being in face-to-face in Victoria. We've set the time zone, or we announced that in the time zone for Victoria. So you might want to just double check what that turns out to be in your time zone, but it would be noon for the Pacific time zone. And then following that, we've got the Great Canadian Radon Map webinar and 7 Signs of a Difficult House. And then we have a couple French presentations as well. Comment s'adresser aux médias, les bons outils. I should have practiced that first, but we do have an English version of that, how to talk to the media on the Take Action website. So that one's already been pre-recorded, so that's accessible. We did that last September, but we're doing a French one live, so that'll be exciting. And then also Radon in Real Estate, so that we'll have a few more details on that coming soon. So we're going to do that in English and then also in French. And then coming up in May, we will have the Take Action on Radon wrap-up. And so you can join us and share all the work that you've been doing for radon awareness across the country through the fall and early spring. Also, just a quick reminder for CARST members, now is your time to vote. Today is the deadline. So if you haven't taken the time to vote, you will need your email address and you've access to your email, and then you will also need your membership number. If you don't have that, I can email it to you. And then just a reminder, if you haven't checked it out, we are excited to announce an insurance update. So we've put a package together with Toolpete, and information of that is available online, so you can check that out. All right, and we have also wanted to announce that we have Radon Olympics Work at Home edition. So it would not be a CARST conference if we didn't bring in the Radon Olympics. So we wanted to find a way to do that. And so we'll talk a little bit that later. But we do have a Radon Olympics edition. And if I can do this properly, we might even be able to start with that. Oh, I think I can. So as part of our Radon Olympics, we are going to start off with a trivia question. So it'll give you a chance to practice our poll. We will use it a little bit later during the presentations. But our trivia question as part of our Radon Olympics today is about one of our radon pioneers. So today, April 17th, marks the death of an important radon pioneer. So take a minute and figure out who do you think it might be. It could be Ernest Rutherford, Harriet Brooks, Frederick Dorn, William Ramsey. So you should be able to just click your choice, and I'll give you a few seconds so that everybody gets a chance to join in and choose, but do it quickly. We won't take too long on this. And then we will reveal the answers shortly. All right, the votes are coming in. This is just getting you warmed up, getting you thinking back about radon. I'm sure you've been a little distracted lately with other things, so we want to get you back in the radon mode. Good, all right. Well, those votes are coming in. I'll also just get you to orient yourself. So you should be able to move your mouse around to be able to vote. Then you also want to find the Q&A button on your dashboard and the chat button. So you might want to check that out if you haven't already chatted in. We want to know that you're here. Let us know where you're coming from across the country. We will also just check out the Q&A. So we will use that during the session after each presentation so that you can ask questions we'll use that. All right, so we're starting to slow down. I'm going to end the polling here. The last few chances to get your vote in. And I will share the results here. But before I share the results, I think I can give you the announcement. There we go. So we have a number of people who thought Ernest Rutherford. Indeed, we do talk about Ernest Rutherford as an important radon pioneer. We're certainly proud of his Canadian roots. But Harriet Brooks, we talked about her last year at the conference, and just the work that she actually did. She really did a lot of the groundwork, but was not recognized for the work that she did. And today marks the importance of her death. And so she certainly was a physicist in Ontario and died in Montreal. All right, so just a little fun to get us going. And now I'm going to move on. There we go. All right, so Peter, I'm going to, oops, I'm going to let you take the presentation back. So I'm just going to stop showing my screen, which I think oh, not quite. There we go. All right, so I'm going to stop showing my screen and let you take over. Okay, am I up? You are up. And so, sorry, I had notes to introduce you and I set them aside here and I can't reach them. So I'll let you each introduce yourselves. Sure, sure. Yeah, well, anyway, thank you, Pam, for organizing. I hope everybody out there is safe and well. And I'm sorry I missed visiting Victoria this year, but we adapt, improvise, and overcome, don't we? So anyway, today it's my pleasure to discuss the products from EcoSense. This is a company that I'm helping to advise. I'm an old R&D director from PPG Industries, took a retirement, just doing fun stuff at this point and things that I think are worthwhile. And radon is certainly one of them. It's a very important topic. So what we'll be talking about will be the products from EcoSense. This is the consumer product. This is the professional product. They look just about the same, and that can be a little confusing, but we're going to clarify that today because the Pro has very, very different capabilities. And I am at 0.29 picocuries per liter here in my office, so I'm very happy about that. Okay, let me share screen at this point. And how are we doing? Not quite yet. You probably just need to share and accept. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, now we can see it. Okay. All right. So anyway, excuse me. So anyway, this is the motto behind EcoSense, saving lives through increased radon awareness. And one of the reasons that I'm happy to buy into the mission and help Insoo and the team. EcoSense was founded only last year, so that's why many of you may not have heard about it. We're headquartered in San Jose as an independent subsidiary of FT Lab in South Korea, which maybe you folks have heard of. In San Jose, we've been doing software, cloud and server R&D, software development, feeding back features to Korea to help us improve the product. And we're trying to professionalize the sales and marketing here in the US and Canada and in Europe. The technology is based on ion chamber, different from many of the technologies that you'll see out there. And we have products for general consumers, professional use by home inspectors and mitigators. And then we also have the sensor that's embedded within these products that possibly could be of use in HVAC control or possibly in IAQ devices. There is a little bit of maturity to us. We've sold about 50,000 when you count the consumer products between Korea and the US and Canada. So we're getting some very good experience. So here's a look at the products. The Radon Eye is the consumer product. It's Bluetooth to phone, and that's it. The professional product
has Wi-Fi capability, and thus you can monitor from just about anywhere. Very, very important for your inspection businesses. The Pro is also NRPP and C-NRPP certified. And at the bottom, you see a look at the IAQ sensor. The technology is patented, 2018 patent, covers the novel circuitry that we use to measure these very, very tiny currents from the ion chambers. And the circuitry is optimized to extract signal to noise in an optimum way. So again, very different. FT Lab was a developer of scientific instrumentation and took a completely different approach than prior technologies. So this is preaching to the choir a bit for you guys, but I do want to note that modern construction methods have increased the levels of radon in homes. New construction just tends to be a little bit tighter for energy efficiency. You just don't have the passive ventilation that you do in older construction methodologies. So that is something that we're going to have to be taking into consideration as we go forward. Again, preaching to the choir here, but take a look at the bottom line, $8.5 billion per year in healthcare costs in the US due to lung cancer cases, all the way from inception to however they conclude. That's a lot of money. And I think we all should be using our networks to lobby the folks that pick up the bill for this, our respective governments, and also our insurance carriers. It's a ton of money. 21,000 deaths should get attention. You can compare that to accidents in the US in driving, about 35 to 40,000. Many years ago, that was up there at 55,000, and just the shock at those numbers drove action to bring things down to the current 35,000 or so. But our 21,000 ought to be getting more attention. Again, preaching to the choir here, Canada, obviously in the prairie and Maritimes has as much difficulty as we do down here in the States. You're probably aware that the US EPA is considering an action level at 2 picocuries, which is something that, again, we should all be lobbying through our networks to see that we get some change. At the US state level, currently there are laws on radon in 34 states. Most of this relates to real estate transactions, but again, through our networks, why can't we get more happening with respect to public buildings, schools where people spend a lot of time, daycare centers, etc. So let's get into the products here. Here's a look at the consumer device. Again, this is BLE reporting to phones. What's really cool about it is you get a first reading in 10 minutes and then an update every 10 minutes thereafter. And we have a sensitivity level that's 10 times more sensitive in counts per hour than incumbent active technologies. So 10 is going to be one of our themes in the presentation today. So remember that 10 minutes per update, 10 times more sensitive. And with that, you essentially get near real-time information, as much information as you really need. The professional device is different. It's got the Wi-Fi capability, and therefore not only can it report to your phone or your iPad on the go, but your desktop back in your office. At your desktop, it also empowers you to do report preparation, which should be a real time saver. Again, it has the same industry-leading sensitivity, the 30 counts per hour per picocurie per liter, updates every 10 minutes. And also it's capable of doing timed inspections and also continuous monitoring. So you can use it several different ways. Okay. So how might one use the Radon Eye Pros? Well, suppose you want to identify rapidly the hotspots in a home. You can bring your Pro to do the timed inspection, setting it up for 24 hours or 48 hours, for instance. But also you can have our low-cost consumer products they're at a price point that you could bring several and just leave them in different locations in a home to decide where you want to measure and take your reportable results. Here's a breakout on just what this speed means. We are getting first data within 10 minutes, but within an hour, this reaches stability. So within an hour, you pretty much know what your final numbers are going to look like. And therefore, again, you can use these products as sniffers in different locations to decide very quickly where you want to take your reportable measurements. Here also we have the 30 counts per hour metric compared to a couple of our competitors, which are down in the 3 to 4 counts per hour range. For the Pro, the table at the bottom is a further breakout. For the first time here, we're showing comparison in pricing. And you see we're trying to be quite attractive, even though we've got these additional features. So how do we know all this? Well, a couple years ago, there was a study at Gimpo University in Korea that compared us against the Durage Rad7. And here you see the results over the period. We track right on top of measurements taken by a considerably more costly device. Our consumer device would be down at 179, so quite different. Here's another third-party validation by the University of Michigan. And here again, we're reading right on top of a sophisticated, more expensive device. In this case, the AlphaGuard from Safimo. And you'll see a quote at the bottom from this presentation. Radon Eye performed significantly better than expected for an extremely affordable device. Here's a breakout of the graphic in the last slide. And it shows that just minute by minute, we're just right on top of what the more expensive technology can do. We're also NRPP certified and C-NRPP certified. What this means is you want to calibrate these devices, send them in annually. We have an agreement with Bowser Morner to do that at an attractive price of $6. So as you guys know, there's many ways to measure radon at different price points. The incumbent technologies at a consumer level, especially in a DIY sense, tend to be the plastic crack detector chips, also charcoal absorption. These are sent out to a lab to count. The active technologies are generally based on scintillation or semiconductor methods. And again, these are just a little bit less sensitive. So what we want to do is establish a new paradigm that active technologies should be what consumers ought to be directed to. And the reason for this is that there's a very wide seasonal variation in radon measurement, such that short-term measurements really don't correlate terribly well to long-term measurements. A little further breakout on incumbent technologies. Again, the DIY test kits. Generally, people are eager for a result, maybe don't use these for as long as they should. We understand averages can be less than a week. But again, even in that period of time, you're not picking up on the long-term trends. The professional monitoring, again, it uses a more expensive device that just can't be left in place very long. Whoever owns it has to keep that in circulation. So they're charging maybe $200 for a test, but again, it's short term. Now, why do I keep bringing up short term? Well, there's a seminal paper that came out just in the last year from the University of Calgary, and I really encourage everybody to look this up. They studied around, I think it was 11,000 homes to try and draw various correlations. And they used different detection technologies. They attempted short-term to long-term correlations and found absolutely no correlation in, say, 5-day testing versus long-term testing. The paper also reinforces the point about modern construction actually amplifying the amount of radon that we find in the homes we live in. The airtight insulation methods, the prevalence for use of air conditioning now, less window opening, the larger footprint also was pointed out is very important as why modern construction is behaving this way. Here's a look at some typical data that a Radon Eye Pro will kick out. And what you see again here is very, very wide variation, up to 10 times variation in what I would consider a typical home, just based on factors like seasonality, different temperatures between indoors and outdoors, resulting in a chimney effect. Also in the warmer weather on the right-hand side, just the behavior of opening windows. Just huge variations can occur depending on seasonality and behavior. Here's a look at some of the specifications of the Radon Eye Pro, and we've discussed a number of them already, but I just point out a few things we haven't touched on. One is the data storage capacity of these devices. We have the capability of doing 10 240-hour inspections and keeping that data within the device. We also have the capability of taking 300 days continuously, meaning over 7,000 data points are stored locally. The device, in the case of the Pro, is also 12 volt, but can be set up to be battery powered. And this is important for leaving it on site during your inspections. We haven't talked about it much, but the display on top of the device is OLED, which also gives you a nice output of current radon measurement, showing the 10-minute update, shows the peak. It also shows you temperature and humidity and gives you rolling averages over different periods of time. The data from this can be exported to in a text file that you can use in your own report generation. And then also importantly, it has an embedded accelerometer, so you can tell whether or not the device has been moved during an inspection, and you may want to consider starting that inspection over again. So when you take all these together, the implications of low cost, the data rate, and the connectivity, we think this will be important for home inspectors because now you can afford multiple devices and deploy them in multiple locations to result in faster inspections, more accurate inspections because chances are you've identified the hot spots you need to. You'll be able to look at multiple rooms or multiple stories, for instance. So a greater likelihood of source identification will result. Again, with the Pro, you can simultaneously inspect different properties and have up to 10 of them reporting to your phone or your desktop back in your office. Another thing to think of, though, is because the consumer version is as low cost as it is, It might be something that you would want to leave in place after an initial inspection, or you may want to use as an upsell to your clients to assure them that what might be going on seasonally. So just beginning to summarize here, this is a look at the current products, the consumer model at $179, the Radon Eye Pro at $795 with the Wi-Fi. Ordering can be done not only at the EcoSense website, but also Amazon.com. One thing to be aware of if you're ordering the Pro, the battery needs to be ordered separately, and we can recommend vendors for that. The issue here is we just can't ship lithium batteries from Korea. There's just been enough attention to that recently. So anyway, the professional product is inclusive of the power adapter, a battery mounting feature, and then a nice carrying case for the entire device. Another thing we want to bring to your attention is that we have a referral club. And the idea behind this is that you can share a link to our products with your friends and clients. This would offer them a discount to our products, but then also it would result in a commission, reward being paid to yourself for any successful referrals. So we really hope that this can help us get the word out there. Anyway, please visit our website. There it is. Tells you a little bit more about who we are. Also importantly, there's a nice video which will take you on a tour of the software for the Pro. Shows you in the video how to set it up. It's totally plug and play. You can use your Android or iOS smartphone. The video takes you through how to perform the linkage to Wi-Fi, setting it up for a timed inspection or a continuous inspection, and then shows you some of the report generation features. So in conclusion, just remember those 10s. Every 10-minute update, it's accurate, around plus or minus 10%, low cost, and it's very intuitive. We spent a lot of time here to adapt the software to what we would consider modern North American standards. So, and also please remember that the devices are synergistic. They can be used together. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and ask Pam if she's got a few questions for us.
We do, yeah. We have lots of questions. There's been lots on the chat and the Q&A. So Aaron and I think are going to go through these. One quick question was the prices that you've listed, I'm assuming are US dollars?
They are US dollars, that's correct.
Okay. And then also the conversion. There's questions about the conversion to picocuries and becquerels. So are all the devices able to convert, or is there a setting change for becquerels?
That's right, yes. The devices can be set up for either units. It's just a toggle within the software.
Okay, and then a couple of questions about calibration. So which devices can be calibrated, just to confirm that. And I think Radiation Safety Institute, they can be calibrated here in Canada, is that right? And do you know the cost of that?
Yeah, I couldn't speak to Canada, but Bowser Morner, we have a relationship with them in the US. Again, somewhere below $150, something like that. The consumer device, you wouldn't calibrate. It's just too cheap. And it really isn't subject to that much drift anyway. Yeah, to maintain certification, sure, calibrate the Pro annually.
Great, and then one of the questions, your reference for 8.5 billion health costs, do you know where that source came from?
Yeah, actually, that's something I did from available sources. It's fairly easy to find the cost per individual lung cancer case. That's published. And then one can break out the ratio between total cases of lung cancer and radon-induced cancer. That ratio is published. So really, it's just a mathematical combination of a lot of published data that results in that number. Each lung cancer case to success or failure runs something, just from memory, maybe a couple $100,000. So these numbers get big very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I do also have a question in French. Are there minimal distances to be respected when placing the device in a home?
Minimal distances between the devices?
When you're placing them?
I don't think we offer any such guidance, no. Just the typical guidance about where you want to place them off floors and away from walls, just typical guidance for any test.
Okay. And a question about who determines the values around the color of the circle for the good and the bad colors?
The good and the bad colors.
So I'm assuming that there is a difference in the color on the device, depending on the radon level. Is that?
I think that's the air things unit, isn't it? Huh?
Possibly. Yeah, I'm not sure myself. Okay.
I'm kind of drawing a blank on that. We do have Insu Park on the chat, and maybe he can chat in with any better answer than I can give. But
okay. Yeah. And a clarification for the placement was respect to the monitor. Oh.
Yeah, just within BLE limits, I think typically, what would that be? Maybe 20, 30 feet, something like that.
Okay, yeah. Good. And then is there, you may have answered this, but is there API software for extracting the data?
The software is our own. We get this question a lot because in the United States, the reports have to be done to different standards and different templates. So at this stage, the software is our own, but I think it is certainly useful to present to the client, if not useful, just to say attach to a state or provincial report in a required template.
Okay. And a couple of questions about tampering and using it with a homeowner. So first of all, does the Pro have any tamper monitoring? Or sorry,
it has accelerometer. Yeah, so you will get a flag on the data when there's been a movement of the device. And then also a nice feature is because you can monitor it remotely by Wi-Fi, you can just look at the data and see if it makes sense. You know, for instance, if the radon drops precipitously somewhere in a time inspection, well, maybe your client has opened a window or a door or something you don't want to see happen.
Right.
So those would be the two safeguards.
Okay, and is it possible to turn the display off so the homeowners can't see the readout?
Not sure we've ever had that question. I would say probably not. But again, if Insu's on the chat, maybe he can chime in.
Okay. And so it looks like we've got a chat in saying that on the Pro it's possible, but I'll see if Insu can confirm that. And what is the service life of the Radon Eye?
Service life. I would say it's probably at least a good 5 years, I would think.
Okay. And how about the battery life? A couple of questions there on the battery.
Yeah, this would be, again, from third-party vendors, not us, and there'd be different brands of batteries, but I think like any lithium battery, they should generally be good for several years.
Good. And I'll just take one more question. We've got a few more questions, but we are starting to run out of time, so I want to make sure we move to David. One question here: is there an alarm on the unit if the radon levels exceed the US or Canadian actionable levels?
Yes, yes, the unit can be set to trip an alarm. Yes.
Okay, good. I guess one more quick question: does it measure barometric pressure, humidity, and temperature?
Yes, we've got humidity and temperature for sure. Pressure. Again, let's ask Insu to chime in on that if he can.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to move on to David. And so, Peter, I'll just get you to either stop your screen, although I suppose I could probably take it. Here.
Okay. How are we doing, Pam? Did you?
Yeah, I've got it here.
You did. Very good.
All right, so we will transition to David here shortly. And so just what we'll do is we'll go through the Q&A. Anything we didn't answer, we will get some answers and be able to email those out or post them so that our attendees can see them. We do want to take a short, quick break, give you a chance to just move around. And so in light of our Radon Olympics, I thought I'd give you a little idea of something that you can do. I'm assuming you can see this, Aaron. Oops, let me know if can you see the video, David?
We can't see it yet.
Okay,
no,
good.
I
didn't. All right, I didn't share my screen properly, so I'll just try that again. All right, so yeah, I'll play our example of our Radon Olympic video here.
No audio, Pam. I'm not getting audio, Pam, just to let you know.
Oh, okay.
You could provide a voiceover, perhaps.
All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to take some objects, place them on the floor, and then do the radon eye relay. So you're going to run around, make sure you've got space so that you can run and get a little exercise. So I've got my assistant here, Aiden, who helps me give an example of what you can do at home. All right, so that was our little Radon Olympic moment for the day. So we do want to announce our Radon Olympic contest. So you can take videos at home, 30 seconds to a minute at most, preferably. We will be posting our version of a Radon Olympic video through all of our online presentations, but we want to share yours online too, and there will be a medal. So you will be able to see, we will, want to continue the chance of awarding those prizes for those who love to get those awards. So, all right, I'm going to move right into David. David, I welcome and thanks so much for taking time to join us as well today. Again, I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to let you start to share your screen.
Great.
Time to introduce yourself.
Great. Thanks, Pam. For those of you that don't know me, my name is David Innes, and I'm Director of Sales with Radon Environmental out of Vancouver. Happy to be here today. Thanks again, Pam and Karst, for affording me this opportunity. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a recent partnership we made with Fantech, or the Systemair group of companies, and in specific, the Hero HRV, which is a new model for Fantech featuring an EC motor and 4 variable speed settings. And we've partnered that with the Radostat from Radon Environmental to give you a new mitigation tool. So just let me get set up to share my screen here, and No, not that one. There we go.
Yeah, looking good.
All right. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes, got it.
Good. All right. Excellent. Excellent. So as I said, I'm Director of Sales with Radon Environmental Management. And today we'll talk about a bit about mitigating buildings using an HRV and the Radostat, specifically the Hero HRV. So Radon Environmental, we're a building and environmental science company that studies only radon gas. We work globally. Some of our products are patented globally, some of them just North America wide and some just Canadian, but we do have operations around the world. We are heavily involved in radon education and mapping. We were the first to create the geophysical based radon probability map for Canada, and have since gone on and mapped most of the provinces and now offer the service as a service to municipalities and cities who want to do some radon probability forecasting to help them guide their decisions surrounding land use. So a year or so ago, we joined forces with Fantech, or the Systemair Group, and in this slide here is the Hero HRV. And the reason I like this HRV so much compared to other HRVs on the marketplace, it's got the EC motor in it. So for those of you that aren't familiar with an EC motor, the energy consumption of an EC motor is like switching from the old incandescent light bulbs to the LED light bulbs. You see that kind of energy savings. So while you might pay a little bit more upfront for the Hero HRV with the EC motor, the energy savings pay it back very easily in time. The other nice feature on this particular unit is you've got 4 factory speed settings for the motor. So as you're using it as a mitigation tool, you can calculate the number of air changes per hour that you want, set it to the motor speed that you think is correct, run it, and if you don't see it quite down as low as you like, you can step up that motor speed to the next level. And in the same time, this unit is a high efficiency HRV, so it recovers 80% of the energy. And for those of you that don't know what HRV stands for, that's heat recovery ventilator. So when you install this, the HRV needs to be balanced in such a way that it's bringing in roughly 10% more air than it's taking out. So this slide here shows one of our technicians, Frederick, using the EcoTouch controller from Fantech to balance the new HRV that's just been installed in this particular home. So there's the HRV hanging on the wall, and in the circle there is the Radostat controlling it. So Frederick has balanced it. This particular one was installed in Vermont with CZ Environmental, and Frederick, as our technician, went down and did the balancing and the installation with them. So the way the Radostat functions is it's an indoor air quality sensor controller that measures radon peaks constantly. And that's important to differentiate. Most of the time when we're talking radon and radon measurement, we're measuring averages and concerned with averages, as Peter showed us earlier. This particular device measures the peaks, and out of the factory, it will activate at a peak of 150 becquerels or 4 picocuries. So it only takes 1 peak in that room, and it measures constantly. It's live 24/7. So you bring line voltage to it to power it. Within the device, there's a transformer. There's a sophisticated computer chip with a complex algorithm in it. There's a the detection device, which is solid state detection technology from the French nuclear industry. So once it detects a peak, there's a low voltage, or what's called a dry contact on the device, that connects to the terminal strip on the HRV. And it connects to the high-speed override contacts, because we don't want to go to the controller, because we all know that homeowners do turn off their HRVs in the wintertime. The house sometimes tends to get dry. So if they've turned it off and we were connected to the controller, it wouldn't activate. And once we use the Radostat in conjunction with it, the HRV becomes a life safety device to mitigate the radon. So for that reason, we go right to the terminal strip on the unit. So even if the homeowners turn the switch off upstairs, it's going to kick it on if it detects a peak of radon. So once the Radostat's been in place and installed for 30 days, the algorithm in the computer chip calculates the pattern of the radon peaks. And if the pattern is to go to a peak of 100, a peak of 100, a peak of 100, on the way to a peak of 150, the device will start to activate at 100 after it's got 30 days worth of reads. So it is in effect a smart device. So this is essentially how the HRV functions. It takes the stale air from the house, ventilates that to the outside. In doing that, it crosses the HRV core, which recovers, in the case of the Hero, about 80% of the heat from that air. And then it brings in air from the outside, fresh air, unconditioned air. That air crosses the core as well, but separated. There's no cross-contamination of the air. It's just the heat that the core picks up. And it tempers that air, if you will. So it functions a lot like a commercial in a restaurant. And anybody that's ever done any ventilation work in a restaurant, they have makeup air heaters in line for in the wintertime when they're pulling makeup air in for the hoods, and they heat that air. Well, this is doing the same thing, but it's recycling the heat, if you will, from your house. And Peter touched on it earlier, that the new built houses are so airtight that in many states and provinces now, it's mandatory code to have an HRV in your home. And in those states or provinces that don't have it yet, mark my words, it's coming. We have custom builder customers that were featured in that first slide, RDC up at Whistler. He's delivering homes now that have a 0.4 air change per hour. So they're practically airtight. So you've got to mechanically manage your air exchanges in your home, not just for radon, but for the overall health of your home itself. So I'll talk a little bit about this slide here. This was actually given to me by Grace from NRC, and this was some testing that they did. They've got a campus of about 8 houses in Ottawa where they can test radon in a couple of them. And we've worked a lot with them over the years, putting products in and testing them. So this particular house, off the top of my head, yeah, it's a 2-story house, but I believe it's semi-detached, but that's neither here nor there. She put 2 HRVs in, and she can introduce radon into these houses. There's monitors on everything in these homes. They're really something to see if you get a chance to visit it. But at any rate, she wanted an HRV in the basement and then one on the first floor. So if you look at the averages, when she's got HRV 1 on, one of the HRVs on and one off, she gets an average of 43.7 becquerels. When they're both off, so the static with no mechanical ventilation in that house, the radon level averaged at 222 becquerels. So you can see just with one HRV running, it's a significant reduction. And when she turned the second HRV on, it actually didn't drop that much more with just running one. So really, when we install the Radostat, typically we just hang one HRV in the basement and that services the house. And we try to size the HRV to deliver between 0.75 and 1 air change per hour at high speed. That's kind of our rule of thumb. But as I said earlier, there is a bit of trial and error in this, and that's the appeal of the Hero device with the 4 motor settings, that we can always step it up if we're not happy with the reductions we're seeing. This particular home here was in Chelsea, and those of you in Quebec probably know about Chelsea. There's some extremely high levels of radon in that area, both in the air and in the water in Chelsea. So this particular home was at 3,300 becquerels, and we had Pylon go in and do some testing, and we discovered that there was a vein of uranium in an exposed outcrop in the basement. So we put an HRV in the basement of this particular home and just serviced the basement, because the levels were just marginally high on the upper floors, and it was all contribution from the basement. So once we put the Radostat and the HRV in, we dropped it down to 70 becquerels. And I would say over time, it may go down lower than that. It may not in this case because of the band of uranium that's there, but at any rate, it's even below the WHO guideline at this point. This particular case study here, I believe the slide says Ottawa, but it was actually in Sudbury. The red lines there represent the radon concentration in the house. And in this particular house, it was a new subdivision, and we were suspicious that the gravel was likely, the gravel under the slab was likely the source there. So we dug out 1 kilogram of gravel from below the slab, took it back to our lab and ran the Pylon test on it. And we were getting 300 becquerels per meter cubed out of 1 kilogram of gravel in a sealed container. So to do subslab depressurization here, we were a little concerned that there was going to be too much volume of contribution from the gravel. So we went ahead and put in the HRV and the Radostat in this. And unfortunately, I don't have the new test results back yet, but I just thought it was important to share this one with you, because it's kind of different in that the gravel itself under the slab is the source, or the suspected source, primary source. So I mentioned earlier with RDC Homes up at Whistler, these guys are, their whole sales pitch is building healthy homes, and they build a lot of net zero and passive homes up there, both large and small stuff. And they use our Radon Guard and Radon Block as the under slab new construction solution. But in addition to that, because they're putting an HRV in, they also put a Radostat in each home as well. So, you know, a little bit overkill, you might say, but if you really want a healthy home, and in their case, they absolutely need an HRV anyhow, because of the tightness of the homes they're building to meet the stepped energy codes and the passive requirements and the net zero requirements, that they might as well go the extra mile, or at least that's their strategy at this point in time. This particular chart here pertains to a commercial mitigation that we did with the Radostat. So in this case, we didn't use the Hero HRV. This is a commercial building that was a federal building in Prince George. And this particular building had 1,432 becquerels across 17,000 square feet. At one end of the building, it was substantially higher than the other, but it was high all across the building. So they had 5 Lennox Energience rooftop units in this particular building. And prior to us coming in, they'd been running them 24/7 to bring down the radon levels, because the workers had filed a grievance and were quite concerned about working in such a high radon level environment. So they contacted us and said, look, would the Radostat pilot the rooftop units too? And we said, absolutely it will. It's just a dry contact. It doesn't really know where it's sending the signal. So if it's sent, it'll pilot those. So we put 5 Radostats in, 1-to-1 with the rooftop units. We brought the radon levels down to 71 becquerels and saved them $3,250 the first month in energy costs. And that's something I was neglecting mentioning about the Hero unit. I did mention the energy savings from the EC motor. And a lot of the builders now, you know, especially for those of you that are from Ontario, a lot of the builders, they have to put an HRV in the building now in the new home for the last 2 years. And they'll set it up to run on low speed continuous. And that consumes energy. So, you know, if you've got the Hero unit with the EC motor, you're using roughly 1/10 or 1/12 of the energy that you would be using with a traditional HRV of the non-EC motor. So some significant savings there. You know, we're working a lot at Radon Environmental with these guys to try and, you know, build radon awareness for the whole industry, not just our products, but they like the Radostat so much that they use it in all their homes now. And it's been featured in a couple of episodes, and we were in the process of filming some new episodes when this outbreak took place and shut down all production. But we will get back to it when we come out the other side of this, and there'll be more and more radon episodes, let's call them, across the bandwidth of the Homes Network presentations. So that's all I've got on that. If anybody has any questions now, I'm happy to take questions.
Great, yeah, we do indeed. One question, what's the sensible efficiency, the SRE, for the units?
Pam, if you can email me that. I'm not the lab technician, but I will get that for you for sure. I apologize, I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, no problem. And in fact, I see Crystal and Bruno have been answering questions on the chat too, so they may chat in about that. Are the EC motors protected from moisture, humidity, and water?
Yes, they are within the unit. The moisture, the only humidity that would occur would be across the core.
Okay. Okay, and so there was also a question about balancing. How do you balance the HRV? Now, Crystal has mentioned the EcoTouch by Fantech. I don't know if you want to explain that anymore.
Sure, there was a slide there of Frederick programming on a little touch screen there, and that's the EcoTouch from Fantech, and that allows you to balance the system. And then what you would do, once you've balanced the HRV and installed the Radostat, you take that EcoTouch with you and you can use it on the next job to balance.
Okay. And a couple questions about the defrost mechanism. What's the process to use it?
Bruno, can you maybe jump in on the chat and just answer that? You're better equipped to answer that, and I don't want to get it wrong and contradict ourselves. Yeah,
no problem. And we can add that to some post-session questions. Have you used the HRV Radostat system versus an subslab depressurization system for equivalent radon reduction? Have you ever have you measured the energy use? So comparing in one house, if you used the HRV with your Radostat system to reduce radon levels and then used subslab depressurization, have you ever calculated the energy use?
We haven't calculated it. We could though. I know like the Radostat uses no energy whatsoever. It's like 0.002 of a watt. And then the energy, we could do that calculation. My suspicion off the top of my head is it's going to be very similar unless you're using, you know, the Fantech RN4 with the EC motor for your radon fan. If you had an EC motor on your radon fan, that operating cost is probably going to be a little cheaper.
And does the exhaust intake have a pipe in the pipe configuration?
The exhaust intake, yes. So you can't vent your HRV and take your air in side by side. You have to have 10 feet of distance apart, okay? And you can't exhaust it below a window. You have to treat the exhaust when you're using it to mitigate radon. You have to treat the exhaust location as if you were venting a gas appliance. So
okay.
Not below any opening windows, that sort of thing.
Okay. And so another question, what's the advantage to using an HRV as opposed to a subslab depressurization system?
Well, in some cases, it's not practical to get a subslab depressurization system in. Either you've got poor communication under the slab, or perhaps the client has completely finished the basement and left you, no mechanical room or very little space in the mechanical room. So if you've got those type of situations, the HRV makes sense. And more so, I find in the newer homes where the envelope is so tight, if you're already putting in an HRV, it's generally more economical to just add the Radostat and use the HRV as well.
And what about costs? A couple of questions on costs. How would they compare versus a regular or a different HRV unit? And what is the total cost for the Radostat and the HRV?
Yeah, the Radostat and Hero, you're going to be in that $2,000 mark.
Okay. You do have the savings on the EC motor, but what about the 20% efficiency loss, meaning extra heating required? Any cost studies done on that?
We haven't. I mean, the reality, as I said earlier, is that the HRV is becoming code, and it will be within 5 years. Every province, you'll have to have an HRV, because the envelope, you can't make the envelope as tight as we're building it now to meet the new energy codes without having mechanical ventilation. So really that 20% cost, you have to ventilate anyhow. So it's a cost whether you're using it for radon mitigation or not, right?
Okay. And there was one more question about the install in the basement. How did you, or I think you also talked about an install in a different level. How did you control that? What was different about that install?
Well, the one we did just in the basement, typically with the HRV, it would be hung in the basement, but it would service the entire house. So if there's 3 floors, you'd have both exhaust and cold air return, or fresh air returns going back on all levels. The particular one in Chelsea, we didn't want to risk mixing basement air with upstairs air, because we knew we had that uranium vein that was super hot in the basement. So we just supplied and extracted air from the basement in that one. And in doing that, it brought the levels down in the basement to 70. And on the main floor, I think we were down to about 20 off the top of my head.
Okay. So one question that's maybe tied in here, but one question is it recommended for leaky homes or primarily for airtight homes? And maybe another question is, what's the percentage of reduction that can be expected, which I think maybe have a different answer depending on those 2 types of homes.
Sure, yeah, like it will work on leaky homes. We tend to use it more on the newer homes, like let's say homes that were built in the last 12 years, where the envelope has been getting increasingly tighter and tighter and tighter. I mean, if you've got an old leaky farmhouse, you might be running 7, 8, 10 air changes per hour, maybe even more than that, just naturally. So that in and itself is going to help reduce your radon levels somewhat. What you're going to miss out of that piece of the puzzle in the tight envelope, when we balance it, so we're bringing in slightly more air than we're taking out, we're positively pressurizing that house. So the net effect is the same as if we did a subslab depressurization, because we're positively pressurizing the air above the slab rather than negatively pressurizing, if you will, below the slab with subslab depressurization. And to answer, I guess, the second part of the question is what reductions, we saw from 3,000 down to 70. So that's, 90% would be 300. So, that's in the 90 percentile. And not every case is going to be like that, but that particular case, we sized it to have that kind of effect.
And do you expect that was a tight house?
No, that was a leaky house.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely a leaky house.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between the Hero and the standard HRV?
Well, the Hero, there's 2 fundamental differences with the Hero. One is the EC motor, I guess 3. 2 is the 80% efficiency recovery. That's at the higher end of performance for HRVs, if not the highest. And then the third thing about the Hero that I really like, and that's what made us move towards the Hero, is that you've got the 4 factory fan settings. So, you can calculate the number of CFM you think you need for the home based on the cubic meters of airspace in the home. Set it up, run it, and if it's not quite down as low as you'd like, you can turn it up to the next fan setting. So it allows you to, bring down that energy cost even more. You can start at the lowest setting and then bump it up.
Another question, is it recommended to enable the furnace blower when the HRV is on?
Yeah, just however your HVAC guy sets up the house, if that's the way it's set up, it's no problem to run it.
Do you connect it to the return air duct?
Some people do. Some people put the fresh air in through the return air duct. Other people don't. It's just whatever your preference is.
When positively pressurizing the house, is there a concern about moisture getting into the walls and causing mold?
There doesn't seem to be, and I talked to John Straub and Gord Cook, who are two, building science geeks, two of the foremost building science geeks in North America, and they both tell me, do not worry about that, and they believe that within 10 years, all our houses will be built positively pressurized.
Does the Hero run continually, or does it only come on when the radon level's high?
You could set it, if you wanted, on low speed continuous, and then the Radostat will override that and kick it into high speed when the radon levels come up as needed. Or you can, turn it, have a timer so it just cycles, however you want, because we're overriding all of that with the Radostat because it's a life safety device in connecting to the terminal strip.
And can you set the Radostat to trigger at a lower level of radon, like at the WHO level of 100?
No, it does it by itself. And because it's measuring radon peaks, what I find is even for the first 30 days when it's only activating at a peak of 150, it's typically below 100 because it's measuring peaks, not averages. And then, as I said in the presentation, after it's got 30 days worth of reads, it analyzes the pattern that it's read. And if the pattern is a peak of 100 on the way to 150, it's going to activate at 100. So it will do it on its own. We don't have to do that manually.
Okay, by adding the Radostat, do you lose the other control of the HRVs for such things as humidity control, the manual and the backroom venting, etc., or does it just add another way to start the HRV?
Yeah, it's just another way to start the HRV. It's independent of any of the controls.
All right, good. Well, I think that's all the time that we've got, so I'm going to wrap it up there. I think there was a couple questions about specific specs, links to things on websites, and so I'll go back through all those questions and make sure that we provide some of those links to videos and spec sheets and information, and any questions that we missed, we will also follow up with those. And so I'm just going to take control back of the screen and finish up here. Just a quick reminder about the upcoming session. So Monday, we do have our continuing or our general meeting. So for CARST members, make sure that you register. I've seen lots of registrations coming in, but you don't want to miss out. This is your chance to have a say on some of the things that are going on. We do have sort of a business meeting, but we do want it to be interactive. So we're going to take time for goals to figure out what, listen to you guys to see what our members would like us to be focusing on in the next couple of years. We'll also do a presentation on C-NRPP, just highlight some of the work that's been going on there as well in the last year. And then also a short presentation on Take Action on Radon too, just to give you an update on what's been going on there. And then also the Great Canadian Radon Map. So some really great presentations of examples of organizations within Canada and the US that have been doing mapping. That's a precursor to some work that we want to continue. So this is an opportunity for you to have your say, ask some questions, and give some input to some of the groups that are doing mapping in Canada. And then they will take some of your information forward and we'll see, give you a chance to have some input on what they're doing. And then Colin Dumais is always an exciting presenter, even online. And so 7 Signs of a Difficult House. We've managed to put Colin in a box, and yet it's still going to be dynamic. So you know it never disappoints. We've got 2 sessions for that. So we're going to record the first session. We will play the second session as a recording. So you can join in both if you want, because we all know Colin's got tons of things going on, and you probably are going to miss half of them the first time. So you can watch the second session later, or if you're not able to join the first one, you can join in the second. But then Colin will join for live Q&A at the end of the second session. And then we have in French, how to talk to the media as well. We have our PR experts are going to do a presentation on that. And then we have both an English and a French presentation on radon and real estate. We will talk about some of the Godarzi study, the University of Calgary, dig into it. So if you've got some questions, we have been doing some analysis and maybe challenge some of the thoughts that you had on it. So let's take a look at it as well, and just talk about what's going on with radon and real estate across the country. And then in May, Take Action on Radon will have its meeting so that you can share some of the work that you've been doing. We can celebrate the work that's been going on across the country. And so don't miss out on that as well. Also, your chance to give some ideas going forward on what you think you want Take Action to be doing in the next year. Again, not to forget, we really want to get our percentage of vote up. We really would like you to make sure you have input, vote for your board of directors. And in addition, there's an insurance question. We really need your input on that. Depending, the price that we can obtain for our members on our insurance really depends on how many of you are interested in jumping in. So we really want to hear from you on that as well. Again, announcing the Radon Olympic video contest. So take your video and send it in to us, 30 seconds to a minute. And thank you so much. Really appreciate Peter for joining us. Really great to hear from the vendors about their products and get the ability to ask some questions. And so thank you so much. Thank you, David. Really great to have you join us as well and talk about the work and the things that you've been doing and the products that you guys have.